Some work in finance, others in environmentalism, politics, technology, or art. The unifying thread isn't occupation, it's infrastructure. They inherit networks, not just money. Relationships built over a century of strategic positioning. One family name appears on universities, city streets, and charitable foundations across America. But that's not where their real power lives. The Rockefellers didn't just get rich. They built a machine that turns oil into banks, banks into governments, and governments into generational control that never fades. This is the story of how one man's ruthless vision created a dynasty so embedded in global finance that most people don't even realize they're still playing the game. July 8th, 1839. A wooden house in Richford, New York. John Davison Rockefeller enters the world as the second of 6 children. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, sells supposed miracle cures and disappears for months at a time. Some called him a con man. Others had harsher words. His mother, Eliza, holds the family together through strict Baptist discipline and relentless frugality. Young John absorbs both lessons, the charm and the calculation. By age 16, Rockefeller lands his first job as an assistant bookkeeper at a Cleveland commission firm. He earns 50 cents a day. He celebrates the anniversary of that first job for the rest of his life, calling it more important than his birthday. That detail tells you everything. This wasn't a man who stumbled into wealth. Every dollar had a purpose. Every connection had a future value. At 20, he starts a commodities business with a partner. The Civil War erupts, and while others enlist, Rockefeller hires a substitute and focuses on supplying the Union Army with goods. Meat, grain, anything the war machine needs. Profits pour in, but commodities bore him. Too unpredictable. He's searching for something with structure, something he can dominate completely. Then he sees it. Oil. Pennsylvania strikes crude in 1859, and suddenly everyone's rushing toward black gold. But Rockefeller notices what others miss. The real money isn't in drilling, it's in refining. Drillers compete, prices crash, fortunes vanish overnight. Refineries, though? Control the refineries and you control the gateway between raw crude and usable kerosene. In 1863, he builds his first refinery in Cleveland. Within 2 years, it's the largest in the city. Here's where it gets surgical. Rockefeller realizes that railroads hold power over refiners through shipping costs, so he makes a deal. He guarantees the railroad's massive, consistent shipping volume. In exchange, he gets secret rebates, not just on his own shipments, but on his competitors' shipments too. Read that again. Every time a rival refinery ships oil, Rockefeller gets paid. His competitors are literally funding their own destruction. By 1870, he formalizes his empire. Standard Oil Company of Ohio incorporates with Rockefeller controlling the largest share. Now the real game begins. He approaches competitor after competitor with the same offer. Sell to me now at a fair price, or I'll cut my prices until you're bankrupt, then buy your smoldering wreckage for pennies. Most sell. The stubborn ones watch their businesses collapse exactly as promised. This isn't just business, it's systematic elimination. Rockefeller calls it cooperation. Critics call it monopoly. Within a decade, Standard Oil controls roughly 90% of America's refining capacity, 90%. Imagine one company controlling 9 out of every 10 gas stations, oil changes, and petroleum products you encounter. That's the scale we're discussing. But how do you manage an empire spanning dozens of states when state laws limit corporate power? Rockefeller's lawyers invent something new: the trust. In 1882, Standard Oil becomes a trust, a legal structure that allows centralized control over seemingly independent companies. It's brilliant and terrifying. On paper, competition exists. In reality, one board in New York pulls every string. The wealth accumulates at speeds that break contemporary understanding. By the 1880s, Rockefeller's personal fortune is generating more income than most state governments collect in taxes. He's not just rich, he's operating at a different scale of economic reality. Then the backlash arrives. Journalists, politicians, and the public start connecting dots. Ida Tarbell, whose father was ruined by Standard Oil's tactics, publishes a devastating exposé in McClure's magazine. Her work reveals the secret rebates, the predatory pricing, the systematic destruction of competitors. The evidence is meticulous and damning. State and federal prosecutors take notice. In 1890, Congress passes the Sherman Antitrust Act, legislation aimed directly at monopolies like Standard Oil. The legal battles stretch across decades. Rockefeller testifies, deflects, and maintains that he simply ran a more efficient operation. Technically true, also technically crushing. In 1911, the Supreme Court orders Standard Oil's breakup into 34 separate companies. Rockefeller is 71 years old. You might think this is his defeat. You'd be wrong. Those 34 companies include what will become Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, and others. Rockefeller owns shares in all of them. When they compete, prices rise. His wealth doesn't shrink, it multiplies. This is the moment that separates Rockefeller from every other robber baron. Carnegie sold out. Vanderbilt's empire fragmented, but Rockefeller transformed his monopoly into a diversified portfolio that couldn't be broken. The Supreme Court didn't end his power. It distributed it into a form that became legally untouchable. During these same decades, something else happens. Rockefeller starts giving money away, not small amounts, staggering sums. He funds the University of Chicago's creation. He establishes the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, which helps eliminate hookworm and yellow fever. He creates the Rockefeller Foundation in 1913 with an initial gift of $100 million. In today's money, over $2 billion. Critics accuse him of buying redemption, perhaps. But the scale of his philanthropy reshapes American education, medicine, and scientific research. Regardless of motive, the impact is undeniable. And here's what most people miss. This generosity isn't just altruism, it's infrastructure. Every university, every research institute, every foundation creates a network of influence that extends far beyond business. Rockefeller is building something that transcends his own lifetime. By the time John D. Rockefeller dies in 1937 at age 97, he's worth an estimated $1.4 billion. Adjusted for inflation and economic growth, analysts estimate this equals between $300 billion and $400 billion in modern wealth, the richest American who ever lived. But the money is almost beside the point now. What matters is what comes next. Because unlike most fortunes that dissolve within 3 generations, the Rockefellers are just beginning their second act. The dynasty begins its second act not through business expansion, but through strategic withdrawal. The 3rd generation of Rockefellers doesn't run oil companies. They don't need to. Instead, they architect something more durable. Influence without the liability of ownership. John D. Rockefeller Jr. inherits the wealth, but not his father's appetite for industry. He dismantles what remains of direct business control, selling off assets, liquidating positions, converting everything into diversified holdings managed through trusts. This isn't retreat. It's evolution. The family becomes investors rather than operators, philanthropists rather than industrialists. The shift proves genius. While other industrial fortunes crumble under antitrust pressure, labor disputes, and technological disruption, the Rockefeller wealth floats above it all. They own pieces of everything, control of nothing specific, legally untouchable, politically insulated. Junior focuses on legacy projects that reshape American culture. He donates the land for the United Nations headquarters in Manhattan. He restores colonial Williamsburg, essentially recreating an entire town as a living museum. He builds Rockefeller Center during the Great Depression, putting thousands to work while creating one of New York's defining landmarks. Every project serves dual purposes: public benefit and family positioning. The Rockefellers become synonymous with institutional America itself. The fourth generation takes this further. Nelson Rockefeller becomes governor of New York, then vice president under Gerald Ford. David Rockefeller runs Chase Manhattan Bank for decades, becoming arguably the most connected banker in global history. His Rolodex contains the private numbers of presidents, premiers, and dictators across 6 continents. Winthrop Rockefeller serves as governor of Arkansas. Lawrence Rockefeller pioneers venture capital and environmental conservation. John D. Rockefeller III focuses on Asian philanthropy and cultural exchange. Each brother operates in a different sphere, expanding family influence across business, politics, environmentalism, and international relations simultaneously. This diversification is strategic. No single scandal, policy shift, or economic collapse can touch the entire structure. The family becomes a distributed network rather than a concentrated target. The wealth management itself becomes legendary. Rockefeller financial offices operate with Swiss precision, managing trusts within trusts, foundations layered beneath holding companies, assets spread across jurisdictions and asset classes. Transparency is minimal. Exact figures remain unknown outside family circles. What's documented is staggering enough. The Rockefeller Foundation alone has distributed over $17 billion since its creation. The Rockefeller Brothers Fund continues operating today. Rockefeller University remains a premier research institution. The family's philanthropic footprint exceeds most national budgets. But wealth and philanthropy tell only part of the story. The real power sits in networks. David Rockefeller founded the Trilateral Commission, bringing together leaders from North America, Europe, and Japan. He was instrumental in the Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderberg Group, and countless other organizations where policy gets shaped before it reaches public debate. Critics call this shadow government. Defenders call it responsible stewardship by those with global perspective. Both sides agree the influence is real. By the 5th and 6th generations, the Rockefellers number in the hundreds. The fortune is fragmented across countless trusts, but the name retains power. A Rockefeller still opens doors. The network still functions. Cousins may not know each other personally, but they share access to resources most families can't imagine. Modern estimates of total Rockefeller family wealth range wildly, from $11 billion to over $1 trillion, when including institutional assets influenced but not directly controlled. The real number is unknowable. That's by design. What's certain is this: the industrial fortune John D. Rockefeller built has outlasted every other Gilded Age empire. The Vanderbilt money dissipated, Carnegie's wealth dispersed through philanthropy. Even modern tech fortunes face uncertainty with each market shift. The Rockefellers endure because they learned something crucial. Concentrated wealth attracts attacks. Distributed influence survives. They stopped being oil barons and became something harder to categorize. Institutional architects, network nodes, power brokers who rarely need to flex because the system itself reflects their century of shaping it. Standard Oil is long gone, broken and reformed and merged countless times. But walk through Rockefeller Center, study at Rockefeller University, or trace the funding behind major policy institutes, and you'll find the name. Not dominating, just present, always present. That's the real achievement, not the billions accumulated, though those were staggering, not the business empire, though it reshaped global energy. The achievement is longevity, building something that survives its builder, then survives his children, then becomes woven so deeply into institutional fabric that it can't be removed without unraveling the tapestry itself. John D. Rockefeller created the template for dynastic wealth in industrial America. His descendants perfected the art of making it permanent. The fortune remains, the influence remains, the name remains. Most empires rise and fall within a lifetime. The Rockefellers have been rising for 5 generations and show no signs of stopping. That's the difference between being rich and building a dynasty. One ends, the other compounds. From a single refinery in Cleveland to a network so vast it's impossible to map completely. The Rockefeller story rewrites what's possible when ruthless strategy meets generational thinking. They didn't just accumulate wealth, they transformed it into something that can't be taxed away, regulated into nothing, or lost through poor decisions by heirs who never built anything themselves. The oil is gone. The monopoly shattered a century ago. But the universities still teach, the foundations still grant, the networks still connect, and somewhere in Manhattan a Rockefeller name still appears on a building that shapes how millions of people think about power itself. Most families spend fortunes. The Rockefellers spent 100 years making theirs impossible to spend. That's not luck, that's architecture.